example, Friday prayer is not solely for self-development. It's literally for the function of having that community, building those ties, building that network, and growing with the believers around you. That's the function of that. And Hajj, also big aspect and component of Hajj is seeing people go there. When Malcolm X went there, he was impacted because of the people that he saw from all religious backgrounds. If you're the only person on earth that goes to do Hajj, I don't know if it's going to be as meaningful as when you see people from all walks of life, from all races and ethnicities coming to God's house. You see? So there are
I don't
social
think that
elements even to the
matters
rituals.
though. I think it doesn't matter if it's ethnicity or not. It's about the genuine. Like, am I genuine enough? Am I doing
Yeah,
this
but if you're
really
racist,
genuinely?
but he was
No, we're
racist.
not
That was the whole thing.
racist.
No,
No.
he was racist. That was the whole thing. He went there with the whole Nation of Islam ideology of white people being the devil. And then he says, I'm seeing white people here that are whiter than even white people in America, and they're prostrating before their Lord. They're prostrating at the Kaaba.
Mm.
That had a huge impact on him. So that sense of unity, what's that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's the popular narrative that's promoted by the State Department and the Arab world and the Sunni hegemonic world, even Shias. But Malcolm's story is much more nuanced than that. I wouldn't call him a racist per se. I'd say he's an anti-racist. But even on his journey, he mentioned several times how he saw birds of the same feather would flock together. So even on and Hajj was not the first time that he went there, and he knew about Albanian Muslims, Turkish Muslims. He knew about all these things. So as a part of the nation, he had quite a bit of familiarity, especially from a PR and diplomatic role. But I get the point you're saying. But
Yeah,
I
the
think
point
that
I'm
Malcolm
making,
is often.
the point I'm making is that as a doctrine, if your religious doctrine includes inherent racism, it gets addressed in this way. Now, if we want to go into nuances of Malcolm X's circumstances, sure, but that's the point I'm making. What I'm saying is that the collective impact of these worship practices extend beyond just the individual, specific individual engaging in them. That's kind of the point I was trying to make. Peace be upon you, brother Jude. We got a bunch of people here. Praise God. We'll just load up verses,
Hey,
inshallah.
So you got one more minute. So
yeah. Oh, well, we got War Thunder here. Peace be upon you.
peace be upon you.
Praise God. Yeah, we got a lot of good people here. Tosif, I think this is your first Quran study with us. You're welcome to come every day, man. We love to hear your
Yeah, no,
views.
that'd be great. I think some years ago I attended a different session. I don't know if it was a Quran study, but it was like a year and a half ago. But then it became a situation of
Did you
figuring out the
just
timetable and fit it in.
have you just not known about us? Because I seen you on the server, but I've never seen you join voice. Did you just not know that we have sessions every day?
I didn't know it was every day. I thought it was like a particular day of the week. That's part of it. And I'm just getting used to Discord. I've had a Discord
Oh,
account for
okay.
some time. I just haven't really been. Yeah,
Oh,
it's getting
mashallah.
easier to navigate now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, we're here every day, almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have activity. So this right now is our formal Quran study starting. And peace be upon everyone. Let's just load the verses, so we get this started, and then we get a volunteer to read. I don't know, Warta. I'm not in front of my computer today.
Yeah, you can. I can load up. I'm gonna load it up. The first batch. I'm just gonna do 5 verses, as 102 talks about the war precautions. That one, and I think that's gonna be a more lengthy discussion. So we can do the second batch is 102 through 106. But I'll load in the first one.
Sounds good. Let's do it. Inshallah.
Did you ping people or not yet?
No, that's peacefulness.
So have you started yet?
We're loading and for Brother Tosif, I know you're new, so we're loading the verses in VC1-chat.
Okay.
So if you could follow along in that channel, that's where we load verses, and that's where the text conversation is going on. So do we have a volunteer to just read right now?
I wouldn't mind.
All right, go for it. Starting at apathy condemned. and 497. Go ahead, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Should I read Arabic first or English?
No, it's
Just English. Just English there.
English. Okay. Those whose lives are terminated by the angels, while in the state of wronging their souls, the angels will ask them, "What was the matter with you?" They will say, we were oppressed on earth." They will say, "Was God's earth not spacious enough for you to immigrate therein?" For these the final adobe is hell and a miserable destiny. I didn't understand it myself. Can somebody explain?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll
I'll,
talk about it, inshallah. Just
I'll
finish reading
continue it.
everything
I'll
and then we'll
continue.
talk about it. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Exempted are the weak men, women, and children who do not possess the strength nor the means to find a way out. These may be pardoned by God. God is pardoner, forgiver. Anyone who immigrates in the cause of God will find on earth great bounties and richness. Anyone who gives up his home, immigrating to God, his messenger, then death catches up with him, his recompense is reserved with God. God is forgiver, most merciful. When you travel during war, you commit no error by shortening your contact prayers, salat. If you fear that the disbelievers may attack you, surely the disbelievers are ardent enemies. Can we talk about this and explain?
Yeah. You want to? You got any comments or questions you wanna pose?
Yeah, I didn't understand the first words. It's like I don't know what it
So,
really talking about. I know
yeah.
it's saying somebody's going to hell. I don't know why they're going to hell. I don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. So these are some wicked people. They're not really good people, and when their life are terminated, their
Why are
lives
they
are
not
terminated
wicked?
for
If I could,
many reasons. And they come up with an excuse. They say that, oh, we were oppressed in this land, right? We were living with people that were not good, they were unrighteous, the society was not good. Then the angels tell them, the earth is very spacious, it's very big. So you should have immigrated to somewhere else, to another place. Um, so that you can get out of that society that is, not a good place for you. That's why it's just an excuse that these people make up, but it's not a good excuse. But then again, many
Okay,
people are
okay, I
not,
understood.
yeah, but many people
Go
are
on.
not able to immigrate, especially nowadays. Like millions of people want to immigrate to better countries, but then again, they can't. It's just very difficult to do that. And here in the next verse it says, exempted are the weak men, women, and children. The people who were wronged just because they couldn't go to better land, and God is most forgiver, most merciful. So yes, that's what it was talking about. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I understood.
if I could,
Does anyone else have any
yeah,
questions regarding the verse?
if I could
Go
comment
ahead.
on that as
Go
well.
ahead. Yeah.
The whole take is that we can't use this excuse for the most part, right? There's obviously exemptions of living a whole life not worshiping God because we were scared of persecution. It's fine for a temporary stopgap, or again, if you're a weak woman, child, elderly, and you don't have the means. But God is saying, in essence, that if you do have the means, you have the capability, and the community, the society you're currently in is oppressive and doesn't allow you to worship God freely, you need to make that your top priority. And that doesn't mean that, necessarily you're going to do it on day one, but you can't live an entire life, and then when you're resurrected, use that as an excuse. In Surah 3, verse 28, it says, the believers never allied themselves with the disbelievers. Instead of the believers, whoever does this is exiled from God. Exempted are those who are forced to do this to avoid persecution. God alerts you that you shall reverence him alone. To God is the ultimate destiny. So in essence, it's like, we have this.
I have a question. Go on. Finish and I'll ask.
I'd say we have this short window where, in essence, we can like keep our belief in seclusion. But at some point, we have to, if we really do claim to believe that God is in control and that's the most important objective, then we should do everything we can to emigrate to somewhere where, in essence, we can worship freely. And God will help us in that endeavor.
And I just wanted to comment on that. I personally take it a step further, and I'm saying that unless you're among these weak men, women, and children, as was said, you have no excuse. Apathy is condemned. And in those circumstances, I see two options. Either you establish yourself and you fight for your rights, or you have to emigrate in the cause of God. I don't see this apathetic kind of in between position. To me, that's not acceptable. Again, if you're exempted with the weak men, women, and children, that's different. But for the other, for the men, ordinary strong men, I don't see any exception whatsoever. And in that circumstance, I believe it would be apathy. There's no excuse. And you can't say I'm scared, you can't say I'm weak. No, you do one of these things, and that's it. That's how I see that.
Okay,
And
can I ask my
hold on,
question?
I'll just say one thing. So, and that also ensures justice. Because imagine if everyone's just, walking around with their head down and just getting beat, and no one ever has anything. That's not what God wants, So God wants people that actually stand up for themselves, either for the religion to worship God, or if they can't, if the situation's so bad, then they need to emigrate. Again, you have no excuse unless you're weak men, women, and children. What's your question?
My question is 328. So what if I'm trying to befriend disbelievers so I can make him believe? I don't want to force him. I just want to show him that it's a good thing to believe. Is it a bad thing to befriend them?
No, it's saying if you ally with the disbelievers instead of the believers,
Oh,
meaning that you have an option to be that time with the believer, but you choose the disbeliever over the believer. That's a crime, right? Because you can't neglect your believing family, or you can't befriend the disbelievers at the expense of your believing family. That's not right.
okay, yeah. That makes more sense. Thank you.
There's
I
a
have
verse.
I have a question.
Oh, just I'll knock out this first, then Susan, if you can ask your question. 68 and 9, it tells us about our how we can befriend outsiders. It says, God does not enjoin you from befriending those who do not fight you because of religion, do not evict you from your homes. Befriend them and be equitable towards them. God loves equitable. God enjoins you only from befriending those who fight you because of religion, evict you from your homes, and band together with others to banish you. Shall not befriend them. Those who befriend them are the transgressors. Susan, you want to ask your question?
Yes, I just wanted to put aside a caution about, just taking the sides of the believers versus disbelievers. We have a situation where Moses takes the side of the children of Israel over the Samaria. I think it's Samaria, I'm not sure. Or the Egyptian, I'm sorry. And he hits that person, but, that person,
Does anyone hear her?
can you?
Does anybody hear her?
It's Susan, we lost you for a sec. Can you go
Yeah,
back
you
Sorry.
like
cut out.
15 seconds?
Sorry, I'm just thinking about when Moses was defending one of the children of Israel against another person. So just putting like caution in, just because somebody's a believer or disbeliever, we have to still see the situation, not just act on thinking, okay, this person is a believer and that's not a believer, so I have to take the offense. We have to always look at the situation also.
But wasn't that an example of excessive force leading to manslaughter? That's a little different
Yes,
than who you hang out
yes,
with,
but
right?
he still defended that person over.
Someone's causing an echo. Hold on a second. Sister Sohaila, can you mute yourself? You're echoing. Peace be
I think
upon you,
it's
Sister
Suzanne
Sohaila.
herself. I think it's Suzanne herself.
Oh, okay. I'm just looking at whoever's unmuted.
I was gonna say there's a kind of a guideline in the Quran that we have to be extra. How do you put it? Um, give the people within the community more slack, more benefit of the doubt than we do in essence with outsiders. So in 48:29 says Muhammad, the messenger of God, and those with him are harsh and stern against the disbelievers, but kind and compassionate amongst themselves. We also have the example in Surah 49 where it's discussing those from who are outside of the walls from those who are inside the walls, right? In that when it comes to dealing with the believers, you have to be, have an additional layer of tolerance, and kindness to give them the benefit of the doubt and inshallah not cause a division or a wedge to be created.
Yeah, I had a
Mashallah,
question.
I think that was a great remind. Sorry, I can wait and go later. I didn't mean to interrupt anybody.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Don't worry.
Okay, peace be upon you all. Thank God, mashallah, what a blessing. Thank God for the blessing of this study and community. Mashallah, I think that was a great reminder about being kind and compassionate among ourselves. I wanted to just add, mashallah, to the good comments that regarding 328, I just want to kind of highlight this part and delve into it a little bit more. That when it says the believers never ally themselves with the disbelievers instead of the believers, this is a kind of a situation where there's a choice to be made in the sense that perhaps there are two sides, whether it's a fight, some kind of fight, or some kind of cause where the believers are striving, and they have one cause. They're doing one thing, and the disbelievers are opposing them, or whatever it is. There's a side to be chosen, and God is saying that in that case, we don't want to support disbelievers instead of believers. Of course, we want to always support God, the believers, righteousness, His path. Otherwise, we're first and foremost we're wronging our own souls. And then regarding the 497, mashallah, good comments. I just wanted to add that we really have to, I just want to highlight this part that we really have to try our best because 98 says, exempted are these people. It says these may be pardoned by God. God is partner, forgiver. So to me, it's setting the bar really high. Like we really have to try our utmost to get out of a situation where we're oppressed and we cannot worship God alone. So whether it's immigrating, God also says you can fight in order to eliminate oppression and to worship God freely in Surah 2. We have to choose kind of the best course of action to get out of that situation. And I think the example of Moses, if I'm remembering right, that was an example of like he initially supported someone who then he realized is a troublemaker. So obviously we don't want to, we don't want to be supporting people who are troublemakers and transgressors. That's my understanding of that situation. Thanks.
Is
Did
that?
someone else?
Yeah, I think someone else wanted to speak. I don't know if it was Brother Akib or someone else wanted to speak.
Yeah, I had a question about 497 and how does it relate to apathy in the context of the verses?
Can
And
you
how do
put
we
the
interpret
verse in the chat?
497? I think they put it in chat one.
Can somebody help him out? Yeah, thank you.
But it says, those who, with the verses that we're talking about, the discussion right now, how do we interpret state of wrong in their souls, and how does this speak specifically to apathy?
Yeah, so the whole idea is that they are not upholding the commandments and they're not making any effort to do anything. They're not trying to change their condition. They're not trying to leave. They're not doing anything. That's apathy. It's basically being in a state of numbness towards the events around you and your own state of existence. That's why they're apathetic. So they're not willing to do anything. Brother Dude put a definition of apathy. It says lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. They
Yeah, I
just
understand.
don't.
I
Yeah.
understand that what that means, but I'm saying in the context of like, so you're saying that the state of wronging their souls in this verse here is being apathetic.
It's the lack. No, the wrong in their souls is the lack of upholding the commandments. Their excuse for not upholding the commandments is to say that we were oppressed, and so they're using that to basically try to justify, not following God's laws, and that's just not acceptable.
Okay.
You either make an effort, strive. You either make an effort or you leave. That's it. You cannot just sit there and say, "Oh, well, I was just oppressed." That's not an option.
Right. Okay, I understand now. Thanks.
Yeah, to add to that is there's a couple verses. One is in Surah 16, verse 106. It says, "Those who disbelieve in God after having acquired faith and become fully content with disbelief have incurred wrath from God. The only ones to be excused are those who are forced to profess disbelief while their hearts are full of faith." Then in the footnote it says, "God's wisdom decrees that if someone holds a gun to your head and orders you to declare that you disbelieve in God, you may grant him this his wish. What the heart harbors is what counts." What's interesting about this is that the way I understand that is like, okay, this is a one-off thing. If someone spends their whole life, they have the opportunity to leave to somewhere that's more tolerant, where they can worship God freely. They don't make it a priority. You can't use that as an excuse on the day of resurrection, saying, "Hey, why didn't you observe the contact prayers? Why didn't you, read the Quran? Why didn't you, do these requirements of your faith?" And say, "Well, I was oppressed on earth." Okay, well, God's earth is spacious. Yeah, so it's like it's a temporary stopgap until God willing a better solution. But I think the real thing is this aspect of lack of motivation. People just say, "Oh, it's too difficult to immigrate. I'm just gonna hang out here and live a life as a disbeliever."
Can I say something? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, lack of motivation. Yeah, that's something amazing you just pointed out. Like where I'm in this university. Everybody acts like they're smart, but yo, they're really, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna use this word. They're really retarded. They have no motivation to go and learn something and they act smart. And I think there's hella people in religion doing the exact same thing. They don't have the motivation going to get some knowledge about God and about Quran, and then they put it on other people and they try to get that knowledge from other people, and they don't even think that other people might misuse them. They don't even think, like they don't even use their brains, and that's really annoying to me. It really hurts me. I just wish people could have been a bit like, not just motivation, a bit more smart. Like they just help them, like, and they don't even allow anybody to help them. It's like when you try to help them, they get offended. Like I don't know what to say, man. It just hurts,
So
man.
for everyone that joined, peace be upon you. Welcome to Submission Server Quran Study. We read the verses from 497 to 4101. Also, I put an image of the last brochure, the brochure for the last conference, where Rashad talks about this concept. We read the verses, chapter 60, verse 8 and 9. These are the umbrella rule when it comes to dealing with disbelievers. So we need to know about this, and I'll just read it very briefly. It says, God and his angels, inshallah, God and his angels treat every human being as a potential believer until time of death. Let us do the same. Let us love every human being as a potential believer who may become better than you and me in due time. This is by no means the blind love. Our guide here is the Quran, chapter 60 and 8, 9, and we loaded those verses. And I feel like a lot of times we do lose our patience with people. And I keep talking about this, how, look, if you have one interaction with somebody, you shouldn't just assume that's it. That's their state or that's their mentality, whatever. We need to be really patient with people. And unfortunately, God tells us the human being is impatient, right? And so we want results immediately. Either you submit to whatever I tell you, you accept, all my statements immediately, or I'm just going to condemn you and I'm never going to talk to you. But this is not the proper approach. We need to be patient with people. We need to have an open heart, willing to learn. hear each other, and grow in that way. And so in this way,
Okay, can I say something?
yeah, in that way,
I am open-hearted
yeah, I'm not talking
to
about you.
people.
I wasn't talking
No,
about you, but
let me just say, I am open-hearted to people. What if they are not open-hearted to me? So
God
where
says
am I
counter
at?
God says counter evil with good. Resort to the nicest
I
possible
tried to, but
response.
they never
Hold
learn.
on. And then it says that your enemy may become your best friend. So we need to take these
I
verses
would
to heart
love
and
that.
actually implement them. Yeah, inshallah, it will happen. But I wanted to give a chance to other people if they want to comment. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'll read the verse. It says, "Not equals the good response and the bad response. You shall resort to the nicest possible response. Thus, the one who used to be your enemy may become your best friend." Actually, I'll put the remaining verses. They're pretty good.
Yeah, and I think a key point to remember is that, we have to be patient. It takes 9 months to have a baby. You put a seed in the soil, it takes some years to grow to a big, mighty tree. So if you have an interaction with someone and you have that one interaction with them, don't expect for them to change. We had, I mean, I can speak for myself, but all of us on the phone to some degree didn't believe what we believe as we do currently today. And it took us some time to get to this point. So one of the best things to do is to not only have the best possible response, but also exercise patience. Know that you were at one point not knowing certain things and you knew it now. So you give them the same kind of patience in that sense that, it may take them time to grow to that point, and just kind of have that humility and patience in the sense that, I may not have a great reaction right now, may not have a great response right now. They may feel this way about me right now, but tomorrow they may change, or next week or next month. Be patient in that sense. That would be very helpful.
Another verse in this regard, it says, resorting to patience and forgiveness reflects the true strength of character. So if we really want to grow our character, we must develop our patience. I think a lot of people, they want to develop in other areas, which is fine, but then they neglect this aspect that you mentioned. And that's important. Like, I can do charity, I can do other activities, you know what I mean? I can do other things and grow in righteousness in those ways, but never develop my level of patience. And that's a neglect of my soul. And especially if I want to attain the true strength of character, it's not wise to neglect such an important facet of my existence as a human being on here on earth. Any other questions or comments about the verses that were
Regarding
read?
keep, it just reminded me of literally the previous verse from this section we read. 494 says, "Oh, you believe, if you strike in the cause of God, you shall be absolutely sure. Do not say to one who offers you peace, you are not a believer, seeking the spoils of this world. God possesses infinite spoils. Remember that you used to be like them, and God blessed you. Therefore, you shall be absolutely sure before you strike, and God is fully cognizant of everything you do." Yeah, just your comment remind me of that. I did want to make a comment regarding emigrating in the cause of God. It's interesting in verse 100, it says, "Anyone who emigrates in the cause of God will find on earth great bounties and richness." God is saying that if we do this, because one of the concerns is always like, oh, how am I going to fit in? What am I going to do for a job? We have these kind of like worldly concerns. But God is the controller of provisions. And he says, if you immigrate in the cause of God, right, because you want to be able to worship freely, that God will give you, this is like a guarantee, on earth, great bounties and richness. So, yeah, it's an additional motivator. But the aspect is we just have to trust in God.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Is there any way that we could help people immigrate? Like Aquib said something good. It said other than just talking about rituals, let's try to do something good. Like for example, Muslims in China, man. Those people aren't really allowed to do anything, man. Have any of us done anything for them? Genuinely. Have any of you done anything for them?
We can talk about that. You can ask one by one the people that stay afterwards. You can have that discussion about the weaker
Sure.
and their oppression. All right. Any other questions about the verses we read? Yeah.
You can go to the next batch.
Yeah, load her up, please.
No. Alright, who wants to do the honors?
I wouldn't mind, but I did already. Somebody
I
else.
can read.
I can read on.
Who hasn't talked?
Yeah, Susan
Hmm.
hasn't talked. Go ahead, Susan.
Susan, you want to read these?
Certainly. Bear with me. So it starts from 4102, is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, from 102 to 106, and then the footnote for 103.
I seek refuge in God from Satan, the rejected. War precautions. When you are with them and lead the contact press a lot for them, let some of you stand guard. Let them hold their weapons and let them stand behind as you prostrate. Then let the other group that has not prayed take their turn praying with you, while the others stand guard and hold their weapons. Those who disbelieved wish to see you neglect your weapons and your equipment in order to attack you once and for all. You commit no error if you are hampered by rain or injury, but by putting down your weapons. So long as you remain alert, God is prepared for the disbelievers a shameful retribution. The contact prayers. Once you complete your contact prayer salat, you shall remember God while standing, sitting, lying down. Once the war is over, you shall observe the contact prayer salat. The contact prayer salat are decreed by the believers for specific times. Do not waver in pursuing the enemy. If you suffer, they also suffer. However, we expect from God what they never expect. God is omniscient, most wise. We have sent down to you the scripture truthfully in order to judge among the people in accordance with God. What God has shown you. You shall not side with the betrayers. You implore God for forgiveness. God is forgiver, most merciful. Footnote 4103. Your God is whoever and whatever occupies your mind most of the day. In order to belong in God's kingdom and enjoy His grace protection, the Quran exhorts us to remember God always. 2152 and 200, 3191, 341, 42. This profound fact explains the numerous verses asserting that most of those who believe in God are going to hell. 12106, 2384 to 89, 2961 to 63, 31 to 25, 39, 38, 40, 43, 87. See footnotes 319 and appendix 27.
Thank you very much. Did you have any questions or comments about the verses that you read?
So these verses tell me that you don't blindly, say, since I'm doing my contact prayers, God's going to protect me. Now, that would be true if you're actually by yourself, I would think. But in this case, God's telling us to, be cautious, even in that situation. Even if you trust in God, you still have to group up and protect yourself. That's a test by itself. Any comments?
Yeah, I was going to talk about 4102. That's a famous verse. This is a verse that we usually bring up when the people tell us that Salah is not a ritual prayer. Even here, there's arguments made. But basically, the verse prior talks about how there's nothing wrong with shortening your prayers for the wartime era. So then in this verse, it talks about how the prophet is alternating between the groups, leading them in prayer. And there's a group praying with him, prostrating and doing the salat. And then the next group, and the other group is standing behind with weapons, defending them, protecting them, guarding them. And then it's my understanding they did, a couple units, and then that group switches out. And then the group that was guarding, they swap, and they're with the prophet doing the other 2 units. So my understanding, the prophet's doing 4 units, and then each group is doing 2 units, and they are shortening their prayers. And it makes sense in the regard that they would like to pray with the prophet. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I think it's these three verses, 101, 102, and 103, kind of demolish any argument that says that the Salat is not a ritual prayer. On 101, it says, when you're traveling during war, you commit no error by shortening your contact prayer Salat. The people who say it's not a ritual prayer say that it's something that you do perpetually, meaning that in essence, there is no start, there's no end. And how do you shorten? If you say that, if you translate Salat as solidarity or following closely, like of God's laws, how do you shorten such a thing? Does that mean that in essence, when you're not when you're not doing your Salat, you don't have solidarity, you're not thinking about God, you're not commemorating? 102, I see it slightly. I believe this is a 2-unit Salat because it's shortened, and this shows that in essence they each do one unit with the prophet, and they rotate. What's interesting is even the Arabic confirms this, because the you can be singular when it's in reference to the prophet, or plural. So when it's saying that they pray behind you, that's singular, and then it says then let the other group pray, and it uses the plural behind you. So in essence, it's showing that this is in conjunction with the prophet. Then in 103, again, it shows that the contact prayer Salat are decreed for the believers at specific times. If Salat is something that you just do perpetually, and what's the purpose of having designated times? We had this conversation. Someone was saying, oh, the discussion we're having right now is Salat. I said, well, did you make ablution before having this discussion? Right? Which Salat does this correspond to? And you realize, like, this concept of trying to disassociate Salat with a ritual act is a complete fabrication.
I've heard people say that Quran study is Salat, and like you said, and ablution is just clean yourself before you gather with other people as a justification for it. So some, even with the tradition of, like, if you were to pass when you make Salat, you was to step away and so forth, it's all associated with because you're in a gathering of people, you have to be in a certain cleanliness, so that way it doesn't become a distraction in that sense. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, the aspect is that God tells us in Surah 5:6 regarding the slot before we pray. And if we have to do it before, doing the ablution before we do Salat, that means that in essence it's something that's fixed. It's not just open-ended. If that's the case, then in essence, anytime you break wind, you use the bathroom, you'd have to go and do the steps of ablution. That to me, it doesn't make sense. Like in the aspect if this is something that's just perpetual. And again, how do you shorten it? How do you, in essence, have specific times for it? These all have to do with something that is ritualistic in nature, rather than just, again, something that's open-ended.
I'd like to add something to that, if you don't mind. In that same verse, 102, it's also showing, it says the reason why they're shortening the prayer, and half of them to pray with the mess prophet and the other half stand guard, because it says they want you to discard your weapons and your equipment, which indicates that you're not just standing there making an intention. There's some motions that are involved where you have to use your arms and your body to move, right? So it's a clear indication, the fact that you got to put down your weapons and your equipment in order to do your prayer, which is another element. So it's yet another piece of information in those very same verses that reinforce that Salat is an actual ritualistic prayer with movements and motions. So
what's fascinating is every human culture, every society has rituals. This is even the atheists, right? You think about wedding, graduations, baby showers, right? These aren't religious affairs. These are rituals that, in essence, people have adopted. And they say that it's like ritual is something that's so ingrained in culture and society that, it has researchers wondering, like, what is it about ritual that every human, again, community, culture partakes in? The thing is, it's like when it comes to the Quran, God is giving us rituals that are directly beneficial for our soul. And it's I think it's interesting that the Quranists and stuff bash on this concept of ritual. They say, "Oh, that's dumb. Why do we have to do these practices?" You realize that it's these things that, okay, for instance, if you do fasting, okay, outside of Ramadan, you still get worldly benefits for it. But they discovered is that if you do rituals, even if it's outside of religion, you still get benefits from it. And it's the same thing. God is giving us these rituals that have worldly benefits, but the biggest benefit we get is in the hereafter. If we abandon these, it's actually to our own detriment. You know, if you don't fast, it's to your own detriment. If you don't do your salat, it's to your own detriment. These things, in essence, are designed by God to give us benefits in this world and in the hereafter.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on what another way they try to go about it is they say no, salat means the recitation of the Quran during the time of Muhammad, and that doesn't happen anymore. So that's why it was at fixed times, and that's how they go about that whole thing, is these Quran revelation sessions. That's something that's becoming more common because they're starting to see the other ones are more ridiculous. Even this one was pretty ridiculous, but at least they're trying to address some of the counter arguments.
It makes me think of the verse which says that the hypocrites get up for salat lazily. Like, they're approaching it from a lazy perspective, to be honest.
It's
Peace. Okay.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Peace. I was just going to say I'm uncomfortable with some of the conclusions about the shortening that have been mentioned. I just I didn't ever hear Dr. Kaliba talk about it. Maybe that's why. I'm not sure because it's like first of all, when you're traveling, that's an unusual circumstance, especially during war. That's an unusual circumstance. You can do all of your contact prayers in your head while writing. You can do them. So and not only that, the numerical counts are so vitally important in getting the complete 17 units during the day. That part of it. I I always thought of the shortening, for example, like when I say Subhan Rabbi Aladim, just doing one rather than three, or because it doesn't matter how many you do, you could do 10 of them in of that if you usually do that, or Subhan Rabbi Al you could just do one of those, and then at the end you could just do La ilaha illallah instead of wahdahu la sharika lah, and all those things. I'm just saying, of all the things, I can see that's shortening it, and it's still got all the complete components, and it's there. So there's kind of two questions I'm looking at it. I'm seeing, well, wait, what we could have been doing it while we were writing anyway, and why do we justify that it's two? Where did that come from? And doesn't that violate the numerical count?
Inshallah, I can share. Were you done, Jeff? I want to interrupt. I can share my understanding.
Yeah. Please inform me, please.
This is my understanding, inshallah. I'll share. And also, while I'm remembering, I plan to be away from the chat. Just FYI for the group. So yeah, my understanding of this is, 101. It's actually really interesting that God is saying it's this extreme situation where we're allowed to shorten. So people who like shorten or I guess combining is a little bit of a different issue, but if people shorten for no good reason, God is saying when you travel, so you're traveling during war, it's during war, and if you fear that the disbelievers may attack you, so basically it's the kind of situation where an attack may be imminent, like any moment they may attack and you need to take action. So in that kind of situation where you may not even have like seconds are going to matter, that's the kind of situation. And then 102, we know that the salat is a predetermined thing. Like the prophet would not pray, like let's say it's a noon prayer, he wouldn't pray the noon prayer with one group and then pray the noon prayer again with another group of believers. So my understanding also is that the prophet is leading the prayer, and then the believers are shortening their prayer in the sense that one group does, like if it's a noon prayer, one group does a couple of units, and then they switch out. One group is standing guard behind them and protecting by God's grace, and then they switch out, and then the other group does the other 2 units with him. So now the details, the details of how many units and those things, but it just makes sense that, you know, granted that one wants things to be equitable. If it's a 4-unit prayer, each group is doing 2 units, for example, and the prophet is doing 4, but it's working in a way that the believers are splitting up. So they are doing a shorter prayer, and there's a group that's being kind of alert and watching and ready to act if there is if the believers are attacking.
Yeah, mashallah, I want to say I agreed with that. That's a really good point that the sister just made, and I'm kind of confused about what Jeff is saying. So, are you saying they're on camels when they're doing this act in 4102? Because I always understand that's very clearly a physical prayer that they're engaging in.
No. What I'm saying is we're already allowed the right to, under unusual circumstances, to pray
Right,
while riding.
but that's not this verse.
No, I know.
Verse, right?
No, oh, clear. No.
We're
I
talking
think
about
you're
what's
missing
going on
the
in this. What's going on in this verse,
I
Jeff?
but please just follow me. What I'm saying is that we're already allowed that right? So what's the point of shortening your prayer? You see what I'm saying? You can already achieve your 4 units.
I can tell you, it's a unified physical ritual. That's the point of it.
No, not okay.
Because
So
the prophet can't lead a mental prayer on horses. So they're still engaging in a physical prayer in 102. And so they have to have a unified practice. It's just shortened. So the brother is saying instead of two units, the prophet's doing 2 units, but doing 1 unit each with each of the groups. There's 2 groups.
No,
1
I
unit
get
with
all
one
that.
group, 1 unit with the other group. But
That's
it is the
not my
actual
point.
physical prayer. This is not. You're talking about in the general sense on your own. If you're in unusual circumstances, you can just pray. That's fine. But this is talking about shorting your prayers. I would argue that in those circumstances, if I'm just riding a train for 5 hours, I don't even need to shorten my prayer. I just have to do it in a non-fully physical format.
Yeah, I think you're conflating. I'm not making any of those arguments, brother. What I'm saying to you is I'm saying that I can shorten my prayer by just doing doing the different parts, shortening it anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Where are you getting that from? Where are you getting that from?
What I'm saying is that what I'm holding to is the numerical importance of doing 4, 3. You know, doing the 2, 4, 4, 3, 4. Those components. And I wasn't, and all the time I've read this, I never eliminated those components. In my mind was thinking, how does one shorten it? And I thought of other ways which you shorten it, just to make it speedier.
Right, but that still doesn't work because in this verse 4102, under your definition, that would mean the prophet's doing it twice, so he would still be extra units, right?
He would do extra units, yeah. But why? But the others.
So then why?
Less units. No, but the others are doing less.
Yeah. So that still breaks. So it doesn't matter if it's if it's for the groups or for the prophet. Under your strict rule, you're saying the units has to be equal for everyone at all times. And I'm saying at a minimum, the prophet would be doing excess units. And for some reason, you're saying that's acceptable. But if they're swapping out and doing a decrease of 1 unit each group, you're saying that would be unacceptable because of the coding of the rakat.
Okay, I mean, just for the sake of arguing, I can make the argument. For example, sometimes I've done my contact prayer and I thought I did 5. It's like, gee, I don't even know how many I did. And so I'll just ask for God for forgiveness. He wipes it off my record. And then I just do 4 all over again. And that way I've done, my counts are correct. And so in that,
so is your whole week invalid if you miss a prayer?
What I'm saying, it's
I think you're getting too much into the counts and stuff because you're saying, okay, if my lips don't touch 19 times, then my connection with God is not established. If in the week I'm not doing the exact number, if I miss a single prayer, then my whole week gets nullified. I think that's not the function of the numerical structure. The numerical structure is just to confirm the composition, not to address any of the validity or invalidity if I get in situations where I miss some or something gets messed up or things like that. I don't think that's the function of the numerical composition.
Well, I understand that's a perspective. What I was doing was providing another perspective. That what I was saying is that there's another perspective. Yeah, you don't have to agree with it, but I was uncomfortable with the assumption about the two. I think that that's an assumption, I don't think it. I think it needs to remain an assumption. I don't think we can make a ruling
Well,
on
how
that. But
many
I may be
units? I
wrong.
mean, well, it would be 2 or 4, right? How
I,
many do you
I'm
think it would be?
no,
How many?
I
How many
honest.
units? At a minimum,
I,
it would be 2 units that the prophet did, right?
It's all good. I mean, we can just move
No,
on
no,
to.
no, no, no. The point isn't to resolve it at this second. I'm saying that I think these kinds of rulings, they need to be stay in the category of one perspective, because I don't know if these are as conclusive. If Dr. Khalifa didn't clarify that on that, and it may not be, is what I'm saying.
I think it's
Yeah.
good perhaps to just like share our understanding, because none of us, we don't want to issue any fatwas or anything like that. So, and I say that in a, that's meant to be like a friendly, kind-hearted, uh, approach that, we just want to kind of share, like, the verses are the verses, and we just share our understanding. May God guide us to the correct understanding and increase our knowledge. And we just share, and then each person can reflect and decide what they think is the correct understanding. Thanks. That's my input.
I want to read what Basim wrote in the comments. The whole thing with the elimination of the contact prayers that some people do as a ritual. He wrote a very interesting comment. He said the whole concept comes from, or he probably means similar to, comes from maybe he actually means. So let's read the comment. So it says the whole concept comes from Satan not prostrating. It's called arrogance. I thought that was an interesting link. What do you guys think?
Awesome. You want to give any input on that?
Yeah. Can you repeat it? You mentioned the concept of the contact prayer in regards to Satan not wanting to prostrate, and what was the other point you made in relation to that?
Basim, you there?
Oh, we got two
Yeah.
Basims?
Yeah, we have two Basims. Salam
Oh,
alaikum.
wow.
No, the whole concept, like I'm trying to understand the whole you know the whole essence about how people cannot even put their foreheads to the ground and just prostrate. It's a very simple act, and it's a very beautiful act also at the same time, because it's all because of God in the end. But the whole prostrating thing that we can see in the Quran, the only one who doesn't want to prostrate is Satan. That's why it's so very clear for me when I talk with people who don't want to prostrate, and they're trying to define even the word of salat is not a contact, and so on and so on. But the whole essence about sajda means to prostrate. So the only one who didn't prostrate was Satan. So for me it's very simple. I don't think it's simple for everyone to understand that, but for me it's a lazy act, as the brother Alvin was saying in the Quran verse, what talks about the people at the shrine, that they were lazy to do the salat, but at the same time, to not do it now, I think it really infiltrates the whole laziness in people's acting, because we can even see that in Christianity, because the prostrating is even vanished in Christianity, even in Jewish and people at the same time. So we see that slowly by little, people don't have the energy to even prostrate. Like even here in Muslim countries, you don't see people as much like praying so much anymore. So it is a really lazy act, because there's the concept from the Sunnis also. For example, they combine all the salats and they do it maybe once. Like if you miss the contact prayers, for example, they combine them and then they do it whenever they want to do it. It also shows a laziness that they don't want to do it in time. So yeah, that was it, inshallah.
Yes, also similar, the Shias, they apparently believe in 5 contact prayer times, but they just think that they are allowed to do it combine it into 3. So it's kind of similar, but yeah, I guess it's gotten a step further now, where they would do the entire day prayers, including Sunnis, in like 1 or 2 times. So yeah, it is a gradual deterioration.
Yeah, it doesn't suit the lifestyle. That's how I see it, to be honest. You rather have another type of priority in your life rather than prioritize God instead of what that feeling was at that time that didn't make you to go to do the contact prayers a lot. And I think it's very important for us also to say contact prayers a lot and not prayers. That's also a very important commandment in the Quran, because everyone can do a prayer anytime. Please.
Mashallah. Any other comments or questions about the verses? We read from 495 to 4106.
I just wanted to share that when I was traveling recently, and this Qatar Airlines, they evidently, like, at this point, it's their policy that they want people to pray in their seats, which was kind of really hard for me, and I thought it was really ironic, because they're supposed to be a Muslim airline, and they say for safety reasons they want people to pray in their seats, and by God's grace, I was able to get away with doing a lot of them, because evidently they also have this policy that once you start praying, they don't disturb you; they let you finish it. So I had an experience of like doing it in my seat, and it's just so much harder. Like, it's really a blessing. I mean, I guess it was a valuable experience in that sense, that it helps me appreciate, like, what a blessing that God has designed the contact prayer so awesomely that it helps us. The motions, the movements, they help us to focus. It's all aligned with like submitting to God, because we're bowing, we're prostrating. What we're saying, like, when we're prostrating and
Can I
we're kind
ask
of.
something?
Can you guys hear me?
How did you? Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
you. I'm trying to
Go
ask you
ahead.
something. How did you turn to Qibla if you were like in your seat and praying?
Well, I mean, if one is in one seat, then you can't really do the qibla. But then it's like you just got to do it in your seat. But I didn't like it. I don't like doing it
I
that
don't.
way. I wanted to
Well,
do it.
I do understand the safety reasons. Like, for example, let's say suddenly something happens and you're like praying standing and you like hit your head to the roof and then you just go unconscious. I do understand the safety reasons. Why not? But my question really is, how do you turn to Qibla if you're sitting
Yeah,
in
you
your
don't
seat?
have to. That's the answer, is you don't have to. And honestly, God makes the religion really easy for us. In that
So you
situation,
could just
you're just sitting there, and it's really simple actually. You just do all the motion in that limited kind of range of motion that's available to you, and that's it.
Can I comment about this?
Yes, peace be upon you. Welcome. Please go ahead.
Well, I when you don't have a choice, but you want to remember God, we cannot make it so difficult. We want to do it on time, and we know we're supposed to. And I know with traveling, it's even much harder, and the intention is important. And as far as Qibla, God is everywhere. It's not about, it's not about physical when you don't have an option. It's not her choice, or it's not my choice when I'm
fair
traveling.
enough.
Yeah. So I think God
But
is
why are we
everywhere.
so
Hey,
strict on
Soban,
Qibla though.
Soban. Let
What's
her
up?
finish her comment, okay? Please don't interrupt.
Okay.
MashaAllah. Thank you. As far as the flight goes, you destined to go from point A to B. You're going to be in the air 15 hours, and even day and night kind of changes in front of your eyes. You just, even mixing those. But at certain time, you have to do like 5 times prayer, and you do your best. You just sit, make the intention like you always do. It's not about physical, because often enough you're looking at, you're facing Qibla and you're doing all the physical, but you're mental, you're not there. On the other hand, you could just be sitting one place, closing your eyes, and you be the closest in God, to God with your heart. So, prostration, like trees are prostrating. And when you prostrate, God is not just physical. When you have the chance to do physical, you do. But when you don't, you just try to go within and do all your prayer and salat. Sometimes I don't even have the choice of, you can't bend, you can't do any of that. But in your mind, in your head, when you close your eyes, you can imagine being anywhere you want, and detach yourself from surrounding area. And that's how meditation happens. When you do meditate, you don't know where you are. It's just like your soul totally disconnect with worldly life. So I think the intention is important, and willing to do your salat and anywhere basically. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Yeah, and
Well, I just want to ask then, what's the importance of Qibla? Yeah, sure. What you said is okay, but what's the importance of Qibla then?
so I think the Qibla, I think it is very important. There's multiple verses that God says face the Qibla. It's like a focal point for us. It's something that unifies us. At the same time, it's under unusual circumstances, God allows us to pray while we're writing. And so in that kind of unusual circumstance, then we just do the best that we can. But normally we want to do things as God commands us to do it. But he allows, out of his mercy, he doesn't make the religion difficult. So in these situations where, we can't, then we can't. And, I just wanted to, I guess my main point was to say, like, yes, it's true that, the things that were said, I think they're valid. At the same time, my point is that God really helps us to focus, like the physical, the emotions, and all those things. I think really are a blessing, and it's a beautiful design to help us to, that the physical prostration is perhaps facilitates. It's symbolic. It perhaps is like helps us in our submission and surrender to God, and it helps to focus. It was hard for me to, it was harder to focus. I think not doing the physical emotions, and this is, I think each person needs to make their personal choice. I'm not telling others what to do, but I know for myself, like that's part of the trust that, okay, I want to, if possible, I want to do my prayer the way God has commanded it. I'm going to trust that it's going to be okay. At the same time, God has given us the faculty, so if a situation is going awry, then one can make a call to change course if needed. Thanks.
Peace. I think I encourage everybody to listen to the audios, and because Dr. Khalifa talks about this, and he says that the Qibla, it's an organizational point. It's that's the point, because he brings up the verse that whichever direction you turn, there's God. You'll find God, and he even uses the example in the when they had a convention in San Francisco. They're not quite on the other side of the hemisphere, but he faced west, southwest, and he brought this up as a point, and that it's an organizational command. It's just so we're all praying the same direction. Well, of course, if you're on a plane, You know, what can you do? So I want to say that. May God
Well,
guide us.
Salam, kind of add to that. I mean, like you said, it says it's a focal point in the Quran. And if you look at historically with different religions, and we know in the Quran it says a human being only tends to believe what he sees in front of him. Yet, if people can't have an image in their mind of what they're worshiping, because with our Creator, there is no image of Him. And a lot of people have great difficulty focusing on a Creator they can't envision. That's why they create idols, in my opinion. Right? So you've got people in their mind, they're praying to idols. So we're supposed to pray to God. That's why He describes Himself throughout the Quran in attributes rather than things you can have an image of, for the most part, with the exception of the allegory of His light, which is still not necessarily God, but it's His light. So we have this focal point of the Kaaba. God's not telling us to prostrate to the sun. Of course not. We're supposed to prostrate to the Creator of all things. But He gave us a focal point so that we can all have a focus on that. So, when we're praying. So we do have an image of our mind of the Kaaba when we're praying, but we're not praying to the Kaaba because God just said it's just a focal point because there is no image of God. So it is for more of an organizational thing, as Jeff is talking about, which we know from the messenger as well. But it makes a lot of sense why we have a focal point for prayer. And it's because there is no image of God, and He's giving us a focal point for all of us. I hope that makes sense.
To be honest, it doesn't really make sense for me for us to have a focal point for praying, and maybe that's something I need to do more research on in that sense. But it kind of
Yeah,
doesn't make sense to me in the sense that being God is God Himself, and that prayer, and the main objective of prayer, according to the Quran, I can't remember the verse off the top of my head, but is the remembrance of God.
29:45.
Yeah. So us having needing a direction to pray in, and then also where Qibla is mentioned in the context of the Quran, it doesn't really reference anything about Salat in conjunction to it. So it doesn't, to be very frank, it doesn't really make sense in that sense.
So
I understand it. I do it. So I'm being very frank. I do it. I focus, I face Mecca and make the Salat the same way. But the justification behind it as a focal point for us to have some kind of object to all face when we're making Salat, it rubs me the wrong way in that
I
sense,
think,
to just be frank.
yeah, I think the point of it is unity. So if you're in a masjid and you don't have that focal point, and some people are playing north, some people are playing south, east, west, how would you even have a congregational prayer in that situation? I think if you're looking in that context, it makes a lot of sense that you have to have a unified direction. Otherwise, it's just chaos.
I don't know if
Um,
it's that extreme though. Like if we have a masjid, right? And
yeah,
somebody say, okay, well, we're all gonna face this way when we make the prayer.
no
And let's say it's
one,
the
yeah,
West.
but people are going to
And we all
argue.
agree it's kind of like an agreement you have.
It's not though. It's not though, and especially when someone new comes. So, and that's interesting. It says the whole reason, or big portion of the reason, the verse explains, says we set the qibla so they can't argue, right? Because someone, let's say we're in the middle of a prayer and we believe in praying north, and we're going to show up, and we're just going to pray north. That's what we believe. We're not going to conform to the agreement among the existing members. And we have an example of this. We have a community right now. Half of them pray north, half of them pray south. They've had a lot of discussions. They've never reached a consensus on it. So I think a lot of times we just assume that there's going to be agreement on things, but not only is there not agreement even among what we've seen, but also we have to look at the universal aspect of our religion. We're talking about cases where there's going to be thousands of people at a masjid, possibly millions, and it's like if everyone just comes and does whatever, and then how do you even how do you even consult with everyone? How do you even get that agreement? It's just, this is unnecessary burden. It's not necessary. God just sets it. Look, this is the direction. Messenger clarifies. For example, in America, it's south of east. That's it. Like, we don't really even need to sit and bicker on this. And then we just have our unified direction versus disputes. And I know of several communities that actually had divisions over this topic because they couldn't agree to a direction of prayer, and so they had to leave. That's ultimately what ends up happening a lot of the time, if not most of the time. So that's my understanding of the direction of prayer.
Mashallah, I just wanted to add, there are strong verses that God tells us to pray in the, clarifies the Qibla. So Surah 2, verse 144, Qibla restored to Mecca. We have seen you turning your face about the sky, searching for the right direction. We now assign a Qibla that is pleasing to you. Henceforth, you shall turn your face towards the sacred masjid. Wherever you may be, all of you shall turn your faces towards it. Those who receive the previous scripture, okay, then it goes on. Now, the other verse,
But
few
sister,
verses
on
down.
that, the argument would be it doesn't mention salat there.
But
Yeah.
qibla is that's
Qibla.
the
No, I
qibla is the
understand you
direction that you
understand it.
face.
I understand you and I understand it that way, but they will argue that it's something different. It's not related to salat.
Because I think, I mean, there's some things that have been passed down to us from Abraham. So when God says qibla or
I agree with
salat,
you.
it's
I
but
agree
then
with
there's
you, but they would just deny it. They would just
they
say
will
no,
deny.
it's
So
not.
then there's Surah 2 verse 150 that it says, wherever you go, you shall turn your face, and then it's in parentheses after Khalifa has put during salat
Right.
towards the sacred masjid. Wherever you might
So
be, you shall turn
exactly.
your faces during salat towards it.
Exactly. They would just
But then
argue that Rashad is just injecting it into the verse.
yeah, because otherwise it doesn't make sense that if it was not during salat, then it doesn't make
Right.
sense that we have to be facing the sacred masjid wherever we go, whatever we're doing. That doesn't make any sense.
Exactly.
So
No, you're absolutely
one
right.
has
I
to kind
totally
of
agree with you.
put
Yeah, no,
things
you're
in
absolutely
context.
right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I
What's the
totally agree
verse?
with you. I'm just saying
What's
what
the
they
verse
would
that you?
argue.
What's the verse that you
2150.
said? 2:150.
2150. Yeah.
The
I'm just
last one
saying.
was 2-1.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go
It
ahead.
was 2-144 and 2-150. Yeah, you're saying that this is like the argument that people use, and I guess it goes back to the sincerity and people's like decision. Do they want to be guided? Do they want to believe? If they don't, then they're not going to have the correct understanding, or maybe it's part of their journey. Maybe they'll come to it in the future. May God guide. You know, I have
Just for the record, I agree with you 100%. I've just encountered these people, so I'm just telling you what they would
yeah,
say in response. But you're
right.
absolutely right.
Praise God. Thank you. So I guess a question that came up for me during this travel and I know that, you know, these things that God hasn't told us, there's some things we kind of need to figure out and ask God for guidance. May God guide and help. At the same time, I think it's a blessing to be able to share with each other like understandings and what we do. So I was wondering on these like flights that are like, it's like, 15 hours long plus like flights. And like it was mentioned, you're crossing time zones and day and night is changing. And how do people like, what's a good approach to figuring out like how to do the salats? Because it can be
Yeah, just
confusing. Like in the middle of the air, it's like, okay, where am I right now? What's the local time? What's the time for
it's
salat?
really, I mean, honestly, it goes back to the primitive origins of this concept. They didn't have clocks or watches in the past, right? So it's really just based on the state of the sky when it comes to the sun and the light and darkness. And so basically, you should know if you're Fajr or Isha, right? So if the sun sets, if you just witness the sun setting, that's Maghrib. So you just do Maghrib. When there's no more light in the sky, that's Isha. After that, when there's light in the sky, but there's no sun yet, that's Fajr. And then I guess, Asr, would you just see like the sun is close to setting, that would be Asr. And then, before that would be Dhuhr. So you don't really need to even know any local time zones. You don't really need to know even the times. You just kind of look out and just make your best estimate as to the positions of the sun and just kind of how light or dark it is. And keep in mind how quickly it's changing. A lot of places in the world, that's how it is for them normally. Meaning that when you're flying, especially when you're going against the rotation of the Earth, the changing of the setting of the sun is going to come quicker because you're going against the rotation of the Earth. So the Earth is moving towards you and you're moving towards it. So it's causing everything to go quicker. And the other way around is going to make it slower. But some places, that's just how short their prayers are. So it's just important to recognize what we're looking for when we look at the sky in terms of how that distinguishes which salat we're in.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your input.
Do we got any other comments or questions about what we read? We read again from 495 to 106. If not, we can move to just the open discussion. Any comments or questions regarding any of the verses of the Quran?
Brother Yusuf, do you want to come up and express what you're writing in the chat?
I'm trying to find the verse. I'm trying to find chapter. Heads up. Heads up. To express the way I'm feeling in terms of نعلم أنك ضيق صدرك بما يقولون. Because if you read verses 1, 2, 1, 4, 2 to 1, 4, 5, clear, talks about Qibla, and it talks about how the Qibla is a test. And if some people fail to see that, believe that. Does anyone know which Surah Al-Hijr is?
Abby, do you mind reading?
Yeah, 15. 15, 197. 15.
Which verse? 15, verse 97?
Yeah. 15. Says, we know full well that you may be annoyed by their utterances. Right? Let's see the verse after it. 97, 2.
I put it in the chat. 98 and 99.
Yeah. We know full well that you may be annoyed by their utterances. You shall sing the praises of your Lord and be with the prostrators and worship your Lord in order to attain certainty. Some people, man, with the arguments, like arguing, oh, Salat is not there. So, like, we had to shape our Quran study based on what they felt or their argument that's full of holes. Like, I'd like to ignore them, you know, but it's good that we're strengthening our argument and showing them.
Yeah,
proofs.
I think the aspect is just being aware of what to expect. You know, because you're
Yeah.
gonna make your arguments, and then they're just gonna tell you what you're gonna tell you.
It's beautiful how you guys are talking about it. Even when Brother Mike and when you mentioned that there is physical motions that had to be put in. Yeah, and you're praying, you had to put your weapons down. There is physical motions for you to have to put your weapons down, right? The units. But I don't know why people still trying to argue Salat is not a physical thing.
It's just concepts they get from the devil. These are just satanic concepts infiltrating in the name of Quran alone.
You see this verse 97 of chapter 15? It's exactly how I feel when I hear them. I feel annoyed, you know? فسبح بحمد ربك سبحان الله وبحمده. And I was just about to say, I just hope that we get it over with and we get them to the point where they finally understand the proof that you mentioned in this study, for example. But I do know Satan is going to keep working. He's going to try to find something else.
Brother, I have bad news for you. It's just beginning. They're just getting acquainted with this.
Hold on, I have a question.
My phone's
the question that we had about praying on the plane. Did we reach a conclusion?
And I think the takeaway is in 2239 says under strange or unusual circumstances, meaning that you try to the best of your ability. Me personally, I just pray in my seat. I mean that's the way I do it. Regarding the Qibla,
Well,
it's kind of the same thing. It's like if I was on a horse, I'm walking, in the opposite direction of the the Kaaba. I'm not going to be making the horse walk backwards, right?
fair enough, fair enough. But isn't it better to not do it because you're traveling?
It never says not do it, right? It says under strange or unusual circumstances, you can do it while walking or riding. It's a 2239. I can put it in the chat.
I'm confused. Yeah, you put it in the chat.
Yeah. So it says under unusual circumstances you may pray while walking or riding. Once you are safe, you shall commemorate God as he taught you what you never knew.
Salam. May I add to Dude's comment?
Definitely.
I do the same as you. But I just add in my intention to say that I'm facing the, Qibla. So God knows. The logic of that is God is everywhere. So even if you're not facing the Qibla physically, but your intention is to face the Qibla, and God will, inshallah, accept your prayer. I mean, it's like I'm traveling down the road, I'm driving or the opposite direction of the Qibla. Obviously, I can't do it any other way. So while I'm praying, just, when I do my intention, I says I'm doing my, I intend to do my Zohar facing the Qibla for Allah Ta'ala. Then Allahu Akbar. Start my prayer.
Okay, fair enough. My question is, what is an unusual circumstance? I don't think traveling is an unusual circumstance. Really, it's
Well,
traveling.
if you're traveling between the
plane.
two prayer time, and if you don't do your prayer, then the next prayer comes in, you're gonna lose out on that earlier prayer. So that's already, unusual circumstances.
Maybe
You
I
have
can
more
put it in a
time
different way.
I
to
just
do it
wanted to
any other
add.
way.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead, sister. I didn't mean
I
to
just
interrupt.
want to say real quick. Moving in a metal tube, 40,000 feet in the air, 800 miles an hour, seems like a pretty unusual circumstance, especially if we tried to describe that to the people at the time of the Prophet.
Yeah.
I don't think that's really unusual nowadays. Yeah,
Well,
like we're not living in the times of Prophet. We're living in the times of now. You shouldn't say it's the times of Prophet. It's not really unusual to get on a plane that goes 1,000 miles per hour. Not really that unusual.
It's
Hella people
relatively
do
a
it.
new
So many people do
phenomenon.
it.
Yeah, it's just not
then
many
do your
people
calculation.
do it.
If you think that you still got time when you landed or when you get to your final destination, that you're still in the time frame, then by all means do it. But I would do both. I would still do while I'm traveling, and then when I get to my destination, I'll do it again properly. I mean, just in case you die before you get to your destination, you lose out, don't you? You haven't done your contact prayer for your last before your last breath. So that's the only logic.
So I wanted to add, my understanding. Sorry, my understanding is that because the verse says mentions safety. So my understanding is that it's implied, and may God increase our knowledge and guide us to a correct understanding. My understanding is that it's implied that this situation is not safe. So for me, if I can, and again, this is just my understanding, my approach, that if I can, even if I'm in a plane or in a situation where it's feasible at all for me, I like to do it with the full thing, and then I try to see, okay, where am I and where's the qibla, and with the compass, by God's grace, compass on the phone, I try to figure out, okay, this is where the qibla is, and like I said, I've done a lot of prayers by God's grace on the plane, and so my understanding is that it's an unusual situation where it's not safe to do the motions and do the prayer as God commanded us. Then God commanded us. Then God, in that kind of situation where we can't anticipate, we have no choice. That's the time period. We've got to be in this in that time frame. If we're in that situation, then we don't want to miss the God. Then we don't want to miss the prayer, and we just do the best we can, and we do it while we're riding or walking. But in other situations where we can anticipate, okay, before getting in the car, I can do my prayer then if it's time to do the prayer. And if it's time to do the prayer, or I can make a stop somewhere and safely stop and get out of the car, wherever, find a place, do the prayer, then those situations, one can figure out governing to do it, as God has commanded. Thanks.
I think we should be careful not to put restrictions on ourselves, because God gives us these things as a blessing, and we need to trust God that it is a blessing, that you have these situations, and it's a judgment call. That's for you to decide, and God knows, and I think it's a blessing.
Yeah, I just want to say not doing salat is not an option. You have to either be unconscious or sleeping and involuntarily. Not doing salat is not an option, my opinion.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm sure miss one contact prayer, it's your loss, really. Your soul loses. So if you choose not to do it for any reasons, it's your own loss, and you can't make it up. It's a loss forever.
Peace be upon you.
Peace be upon you.
Yeah, any other topics or comments regarding the verse of the Quran? We're in the open discussion of the Quran study.
Did we discuss on how we shorten the prayer earlier? Did you guys discuss that during war?
We had some discussion towards that from 4102. If there's something you want to add, by all means.
I'm just wondering. I'm just wondering what was the solution? How you actually do it?
So we had two kind of I guess takes on it. I can tell you what my interpretation is that in 101 it says that during war we can shorten our salah, and from 102 I see that as basically it's a 2-unit salat, where the first unit is done by one group, and after prostration the second unit is done by the next group. Someone else saw this as a 4-unit salat, where it's 2 units by one group, then 2 units by the other, while the Prophet did all 4. And then there was another understanding regarding the the Prophet did the prayer twice.
Okay, I understand. I think I concur with the first. The Imam does all 4, and then the 2 groups only do 2 each, and then they take turns. That's the way I understand it. But I don't know what happens if the Imam gets shot, though. Someone have to step in to become the Imam last minute.
I think the prayer gets canceled at that point. But that was my position. But I'm open to Peter's position of just having 1 unit for each group. But I just understood that it's just whatever it is, it's just swapping. So the Prophet is doing the full prayer, and then the 2 groups are just swapping, substituting one over the other.
So it's always just 1 unit in. It doesn't matter what prayer.
I don't know. I mean, dude, did you make a linguistic argument for that?
I mean, it's just that it says basically, then let the other group. So it says, let them stand behind you as you prostrate. Then let the other group that has not prayed take their turn praying behind you. It's telling me that after prostration. So I just make the connection. I just make the connection between 102 describing a 2-unit salat, and then 4101 saying the shortening of the prayer, because the shortest prayer we have is a 2-unit salat.
It can be one. Yeah. If it's a subuh prayer, it will be 1 and 1, won't it? If it's a Fajr prayer.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. If it's the Fajr prayer, then that's my understanding, that if it's Fajr prayer, then the Prophet is doing the 2, and then each group would be doing 1 with the Prophet. And then if it's like a 4, then he's doing the 4 units, and each group of believers is doing 2. That's one, and that's my understanding.
Yeah, if it's a Maghrib, then first group will do 2, second group do 1. That's my understanding.
I wanna.
Anyway,
I
let's hope that we're not going to get into this situation, inshallah.
Yeah, I wanna play a small portion of the video. Rashad Khalifa is saying on when you're riding or sitting, you can do the contact prayers even if you're actually safe. So let me just play it, God willing.
Contact prayer, the Salat prayer, is the only worship that must go on. There is absolutely no excuse for not doing the contact prayer. Even God provides that you can pray walking or riding in a car or riding in a plane or in a bus, or even if a person is very sick, very ill, cannot move, that person can pray with his or her eyelids, or even mentally. If you are working in a crowded place and you cannot find a place to pray, you can pray at your desk, sitting down, just mentally going through the motions and the words. So there is absolutely no excuse for missing any contact prayer.
So I guess for me, the only he's talking about like voluntarily, obviously. So, but if you're drugged by someone, you can't do the contact prayer because it's prohibited to do contact prayer while you're intoxicated. But in terms of ordinary, in terms of saying that you're in an ordinary state of mind, regardless of your physical condition or health or these other things, you can do the contact prayer under any circumstance.
Which video was that from? The Essentials video, Essentials of Submission video?
No, it's this is from Principle of Contact Prayers from minute 111.
Principles of Contact Prayers. Okay, thank you. Praise God.
Peace be upon you, submitters.
Assalamu alaikum, Rafa. What you got for us?
What's up? Yeah, what's up, guys?
Rafa, you got any insights you want to share? Questions or comments regarding the verse of the Quran?
1 second, I do not hear you. Can you repeat, Mr. Dude?
Yeah, I was saying, do you have any questions or comments regarding the verses of the Quran? And I also said peace, brother.
No. I just joined right now. I think you were talking about the making up the message Salah, and that's it. I think you do not have excuse, like Dr. Rashad said. You have to do your salat.
See it as shows that it's a priority, right? Meaning that under strange and unusual circumstances, we even have carve-outs of how to do it. That we always make priority to do our salat over other things.
yes. I think yes. Only
How do
if I don't. Yeah.
Good, good.
I said like only if you have something like I don't know, dangerous, more important. Like you have excuse. I mean,
It's
like
had the
like
situation once us. Good, good.
exactly the situation. I don't know. For example, if you are in critical situation, I don't know. You are I don't know, traveling alone. You are scared, sick, all this stuff. So I think you can like everybody can knows very good his situation now. It depends how you feel at that moment. So like for example, two people can travel at night. One of them is scared, the other one is not. The scared one, he cannot he can like he can continue without doing his contact prayer at that moment. If he's scared, for example, there is no problem. Other one, no, he's okay. He's not scared. He can do his contact prayer without any issue. You understand me? So I think these kind of situation are a bit personal. So everybody can like even if you are sick, like you are the best one who know. Like if you are sick, you can do your salat or not. For example, to fast. Sometimes you go to the doctor, he tell you, look, you cannot fast and all this stuff. Sometimes you know better your situation. You know that you can fast without any issue. So you can fast. There's no problem.
I wanted
You got the
to,
point.
yeah, I wanted to take a moment in light of this topic, address something the sister asked. Sister Samantha, peace be upon you. She's asking a question about the time periods for prayer. So I want to give an example of this, inshallah. So the sun sets, right? Sunset just takes place, and the sun has gone down. You just witnessed it. So after the sun is fully out of the sky, you can start. That's a time period that you could do your sunset prayer, salat al-maghrib. Now during that time, you can do your sunset prayer until the next one is due. So while there's still light in the sky, you can do the sunset prayer. So the question was, well, why don't you just wait until the end of it and then immediately wait until the night prayer starts and then do night prayer after? But the whole idea is, it's my understanding that we should prioritize God and the commandments. And so within reason, in practical terms, I think you should do the sunset prayer after the sun sets, whenever you're able to, rather than waiting at the end. It's just about rearranging our priorities in life. Does that make sense, Sister Samantha?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so the whole thing was that I always thought that you had to do prayer on time. Like God says, hasten to prayer. I think something along those lines.